demonstrating that climate change is proceeding and things haven't been improving according to the Paris Agreement. So we haven't seen any indications of improvement in the real status of atmosphere when it comes to implementation of the Paris Agreement. And I will show you some slides here. So first of all, we have seen so far 1.1 degrees warming of the planet, and the past 5 years have been the warmest years on record since 1850, when we established a global network of stations, and also the last 10 years have been the warmest period during this 170 years period. So far, the warmest year was 2016, when we had a very strong El Niño, which was boosting the warming. But if you look at this graph, you can see that the warming still continues, and there's no indication of phase out of the warming. And the next slide shows what we have observed in greenhouse gases. Here we have three main greenhouse gases: carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, and in all of those we have again broken records. And the carbon dioxide concentration is highest in 3 million years, and 3 million years we had 2 to 4 degrees warmer planet than today, and the sea level was between 10 and 20 meters higher than today. So these numbers are already, especially this greenhouse carbon dioxide concentration number is somewhat alarming. This 400 ppm was regarded as a critical level, and we were exceeding that level already 3 years ago. In methane, which is the second most important greenhouse gas, we have also broken records, and methane has contributed about 17% of the warming, whereas carbon dioxide has contributed 2/3 of the warming. And out of those, clearly carbon dioxide is the most important, and its lifetime in atmosphere is very long. If we let the carbon dioxide concentration to be high, the problem doesn't disappear in the coming decades, so even not during the coming centuries. And the third greenhouse gas is nitrous oxide, and it's very much coming from the farmlands, and there we have also broken records. And when it comes to concentration increase, in N2O, we were having the highest annual increase during the period since the early 80s. And the next slide shows temperature anomalies. Here we have compared 81 to 2010 period with the observations for this year, and you can again see that the Arctic has been the area where the warming has been strongest and the anomalies have been strongest, but there has been also a cold anomaly hitting North America, and we know that the changes in the Arctic, they are also having impacts on weather patterns outside of the Arctic area, and some of the cold and also some of the warm anomalies outside of the Arctic, they are related to changes in the atmospheric dynamics, which is related to the warming of the Arctic. And there have been also fairly high temperatures observed in southern part of Africa. And this slide shows what's happening in the oceans, and the oceans have been, we have stored more than 90% of the excess heat to the oceans, and ocean warming is taking place, and we have seen about ½ degree warming of the seawater. Here we have a graph for the 700 meters deep sea, and it's the same story from the surface to the depth of the oceans. And this warming of the seawater has contributed to the sea level rise, and there has been also a boost in melting of main glaciers worldwide. Especially Greenland melting has been almost tripled during the past 10 years, and we have also started seeing melting of the Antarctic glaciers, and they are going to be the long-term drivers of this. And if you look at the average that we have been observing during the past century, it has been 1 to 2 millimeters per year, whereas now we are experiencing 3 to 4 millimeters per year. So there has been a boost in the sea level rise. And that has led to sea level rise, and it's not uniform worldwide. What is happening in Greenland, for example, it has an impact on the southern hemisphere, and what's happening at Antarctica has an impact in northern hemisphere. And then we have also these ocean currents, and that's why we have some areas where the sea level rise has been more than average. And for example, the Pacific island states have been facing higher numbers than the global average, and which is of course very alarming for them, because they are low-lying and they are the most vulnerable countries worldwide. And then we have melted Arctic sea ice. We have melted already 75% of the sea ice mass from the Arctic, and the coverage of the sea ice in the Arctic, we have seen the loss both in springtime and also in the autumn time. We have year-to-year variability, but the trend is very, very clear here. And since oceans are serving as a sink of carbon dioxide, we are at the same time changing the chemical composition of the seawater. And here we have some records from Hawaii from the late 80s demonstrating that the seawater is getting more acid, and that has an impact on the sea ecosystems, and there's an estimation that the pH is lowest already in 25 million years. And then a few words about extreme events and records that we have broken in different parts of the world last year. First, we have seen heat waves hitting several parts of the world, and for example, last June and July, we were having record-breaking temperatures hitting several Central European countries, which are listed here. And also Australia has been facing records which have been also leading to drought and forest fires, for example, in Sydney area. And also India has been facing unusual events which are related to the pre-monsoon heat wave. And also there are other regions. I will show you soon something what has happened in the Arctic Circle area. We have also seen marine heat waves, and we have seen about 40% of the heat waves, they have been categorized as strong ones, and about 1/3 have been categorized as moderate. So this warming of the oceans is also contributing to ocean heat waves. And perhaps the biggest impacts that we have seen as related to climate change, they are felt through changes in precipitation patterns. And last year, or this year, we have seen drought hitting many parts of the world. This heat wave in Europe led to drought in the same area where we observed very high temperatures. We have seen also drought hitting southern Africa, and also Australia, Indonesia area has faced drought. So is the case in Central America, and also in the Arctic. And in the Arctic, those events are also boosting the forest fires that are causing carbon dioxide emissions to the atmosphere. Then we have seen tropical cyclones. We saw Idai, which was the first such strong one hitting southern hemisphere in 100 years, and there were plenty of damage. And in developing country like Mozambique, the means to evacuate a large amount of people, they are very different from USA, where the evacuation is much easier operation. We had Hurricane Dorian hitting Bahamas, and they were, when Bahamas lost 25% of its annual GDP. There was a record-breaking typhoon hitting Japan, which I was also personally experiencing while being in Tokyo, and they broke all-time rainfall records as related to that, and there were severe damage and about 100 casualties related to that. And there are a couple of others that are listed here as well. Wildfires, I already mentioned that they were severe. There has been still ongoing severe event in Australia, and fire season was also very active in South America, and of course we are very much concerned of the rainforest ecosystems of Amazonas, which is a major carbon storage worldwide. And these wildfires, they are also contributing to the carbon dioxide emissions, and this year we had severe forest fires in eastern Siberia, which were related to this route that I was just explaining, and that's why we have seen record-breaking emissions of carbon dioxide from those fires. Last year it was the case, a similar case in Canada, where we got the amount of the annual carbon dioxide emissions of Canada released by the forest fire, and there were also some severe forest fires in Scandinavia. So this is a new feature. And heat waves, we have started seeing a growing amount of heat waves because of this general temperature increase, and here we have some numbers from World Health Organization demonstrating that there's a growing trend, and then besides the temperature challenges, we have also air quality challenges. Majority of the planet is the population there, they are breathing air which is not meeting the health standards, and that's a growing problem especially in many urban areas. And there were also vector-borne diseases like dengue fever, which was where we had 1 million cases in different parts of the world. And then we are working together with FAO, and FAO has estimated that we have started seeing growing amount of hunger worldwide. There has been a slight increase. There was a declining trend until 2014, but since then we have seen a slight increase, which is not good news when it comes to food security. And in the long run, this may be the major challenge related to climate change. So with these words, thanks for coming, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
And we're honoured, before we pass to the questions, we're honoured to have been joined on the podium by Chile's Minister for Science, Technology, and Knowledge and Innovation, Andres Couvé. So I'd give the floor to him to say a few words, and then we'll pass to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. I just want to mention that the scientific report that we are listening today, I think represents a new kind of scientific report in which thoroughness, collaborative and systematic methodology produces up-to-date and compelling evidence. And I think this constitutes a remarkable demonstration of a new type of global organization of the scientific community. A type of organization which, in addition, bases the process on an active interaction with government representatives and policymakers. And I think today, scientists and policymakers understand and communicate overwhelming scientific evidence in single agreed report, which constitutes a novel and remarkable feature in the relationship between science and society. We have the evidence, we have the compelling evidence. This evidence is now gathered in a way which allows hundreds, thousands of studies to be brought together, to be discussed, to be also discussed with policymakers, and now it's the role of other institutions like a Ministry of Science to bring that evidence into public policy, which is, I think, the greatest challenge we have now. So congratulations on the report.
Okay, so if you could introduce yourself, please, with name and media affiliation. Just to add, Professor Tallis is joined by Max Dilly, who's our Director of Climate Prediction and Adaptation, and by Omar Badour, who's the Scientific Coordinator of this report. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Georg Ehring, German Radio, Deutschlandfunk. Temperature depends also on El Nino and La Nina. Could you comment on that situation, please? Thank you.
Yes, so we have this El Nino La Nina variability, which is very much related to the variations of temperature over the Pacific Ocean, and last year was a year without any major impact, and we have seen the temperature increase continued. But in 2016 we had very strong El Nino, and that's why 2016 has been the warmest year on record so far. So without El Nino, we would have seen this kind of linear growth of temperature, but there was this boost in 2016.
Susumu Kojima from NHK, Japanese public broadcaster. Two questions, if I may. First, can you tell us what was the global mean temperature for this year from January to October? And secondly, can you tell us the impacts of climate change on the floods and heat waves in terms of occurrences? I mean, can you say once in a century events taking place more often?
Yes, so we have seen 1.1 degree warming worldwide so far since the 19th century. So that's the exact number, and we have seen increase in the amount of weather-related disasters, and we have seen increase in the amount of flooding events. We have seen an increase in the amount of storms, and also increase in the amount of heat waves and also drought events. And the dominant ones, when it comes to numbers, they are storms and flooding events.
There's a gentleman on the front row there.
Jayanta Basu from Telegram Newspaper, India. Two quick questions. First is that from the eastern part of India and Bangladesh is supposed to have one of the highest sea level rises, is about 8 millimeter per year. Can you qualify it in context of the global areas which are having higher sea level rises? That's number one. And number two, already we have seen that UNEP report saying that we need to kind of at least treble the NDCs to reach a 2-degree limit, if we want to reach 2 degree at least. But this report and the UNEP report are clearly showing the need to kind of increase the ambition. Do you think these reports will have any impact on the negotiation in the current COP?
So the science community has been producing this kind of reports for already several decades. We have seen IPCC reports, and WMO has been publishing these annual state of the climate reports, and they are, of course, as we heard from Minister Couvé, science has been very much the driver behind Paris Agreement, besides the fact that we have started seeing the impacts of climate change. So without impacts, it would have been more theoretical. And all these findings that we have now is indicating that we are more moving towards 3 to 5 degrees warming by the end of this century, and the Paris pledges that countries indicated some years ago, they would mean about 3 degrees warming. And if we would like to reach 2 degrees, we should bend this emission growth curve in the coming 15 years and become carbon neutral by 70, and if we would like to reach 1.5 degrees, we should bend this emission growth curve in 5 years and become carbon neutral by 2050. And so at the moment, countries haven't been following the Paris pledges, which show this. At the moment, we are not towards, heading towards even 3 degrees warming. The numbers would be higher if we would continue our current way of behaving. And here on the map, you can see the numbers of sea level rise, and you can see that there are certain areas where the numbers are higher than the global average, which are indicated with the red color here. And perhaps we don't have time to go to the details here, but this material is available for you, and you can look at it more in detail.
And Minister Couvet would like to add a few words.
I just want to add to your question. The scientific community, for example, in Chile, organizing the COP25, participated in the definition of our current NDC, and those NDCs now contain some concepts like carbon budget, like peak emissions. They were directly assessed and consulted with the scientific community. We have committed to carbon neutrality by 2050, to replacement of coal energy by 2040, and we are leading an alliance of carbon neutrality by 2050, which contains today more than 60 countries. So I think to your answer, the question is yes, the scientific community can have an impact, can make a difference, and I think these events like COP25 are the places where the scientific community can participate in public policy with very concrete results.
Thank you. Gentleman on the third row there, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to know if you have the new index for heat wave to combine humidity and another parameter.
Sorry, could you just repeat the question a little bit louder?
The new index for heat wave to combine humidity and or another parameter.
Okay, so how hot you feel? Omar, Dr. Badour, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, the question, if I understand well, it's is there an index that combines the heat and people? Humidity, yes. This is actually part of the analysis that we have from the World Health Organization, and the condensed all the information in terms of triggering some diseases. And this, for example, for the dengue fever that Secretary General showed a map, it's actually linked to parameters like temperature and humidity. So in the report, we do not provide exact relationship, but the analysis is based implicitly on this kind of parameters.
And if I could just add something on that, at the country level, several years ago, WMO and the World Health Organization published a guideline on heat wave and human health early warning systems. And that guideline, which is available on the web, has a whole list of different indices that can be and are being used for supporting heat health early warning systems in different countries around the world, and they incorporate a number of these different parameters.
David Schuckman, I'm told. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hi, thank you. David Schuckman, BBC. Just to clarify one thing, you say you're almost certain that the last 10 years have been the hottest decade on record. I mean, does almost certain mean you're not quite sure, or that you can't be sure yet because the decade hasn't quite finished? It's the latter. And then secondly, obviously, and you referred to this, you've produced reports like this time after time. Emissions keep going up. Is anybody listening?
So first of all, of course, when we talk about climate for this year, we still have less than 1 month time to finalize the year, and same is true for the decade. But of course, we know already that this 1 month doesn't change the big picture. So that's why we have to say that it's tentative, but we will have the final numbers once after a few weeks. But for sure, it's going to be the warmest. The atmosphere does not behave in such a way that we would have very cold anomaly, which would change the picture totally in 4 weeks. And has this message been heard? I would say that the message has been heard, and there are several countries, especially European countries, who are planning to have very ambitious programs, and there are individual countries which are already having fairly ambitious programs worldwide. Chile as one example. And then we have also started seeing growing interest of the private sector to offer climate-friendly solutions, and there's growing amount of renewable energy used in many parts of the world. And if you look at the car industry, it's growing amount of electric vehicles and the biofuel vehicles that are coming into the market. So the world is moving, and this problem is understood, but so far the ambition level hasn't been high enough to reach the Paris targets. But there's no reason to be totally pessimistic that nothing is happening. I think that things are happening, but so far the ambition level hasn't been high enough.
Minister Couvé, and then we have time just for one last question, gentleman.
Yeah, just in the topic of is there anyone listening? I think we are listening. The example that I just gave is a clear example that we are listening. Our NDCs were constructed with the evidence from the scientific community. The Alliance for 2050 has more than 60 countries today. I want to insist on that. And there's a lot more to do. It's not only countries that need to listen. We also need to involve the private sector. We also need to involve the civil community. And so I think there are people listening. There's a lot more to do. And we have to increase the scope of the potential listeners to not just nations and countries, but other actors as well.
Okay, one last question. Just there on the, yeah, that gentleman.
Hi, Pere Bosch from TV3 in Barcelona. A couple of questions. First, if you could say which is the exact figure for temperature rise since the 19th century. And secondly, in terms of precipitation and floodings, what have you observed in the Western Mediterranean area, which was one of the areas that you highlighted in your report with big floods the last few months in Spain?
So the exact warming number so far is 1.1 degrees. And over the continents we have seen higher numbers, and in the Arctic we have seen of the order of 2.5 degrees warming so far. And over the oceans we have seen ocean temperatures have been rising by half degree, the seawater mass. And in general we have seen these drought issues and flooding events that I was showing, it was only for this year. But the long-term trend is such that we have seen drought becoming more prevailing in Africa, in southern part of Asia, and in some parts of both North America and South America. And they have already had an impact on the economies of the countries. We published the Status of Climate report together with IMF a year ago, where we demonstrated that the whole southern hemisphere has already suffered because of climate change. There has been a negative impact on their economies, and only the high northern latitudes have gained from this change, which is related to higher temperatures and more precipitation.
Thank you. I think, unfortunately, our time's up. Professor Tallis and the Minister Couvé now have to go to Earth Information Day. If there are follow-up inquiries, Dr. Dilly and Dr. Bador can help in French, Spanish, and English. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. That's fine.
Well, Patrick, do you agree? Yes, of course.
We can. Yeah, we'll take my side, yeah. Yes, I'll set, wait, we need to go, but I'll speak to you outside, yeah.